Hello, welcome. So, for anyone who doesn't know, my name is Pirate Monkey. I usually do video game let's plays and comic book reviews with the occasional manga reviews. I'm gonna be doing something a bit different today. I've been reading a lot of mangas lately, just because comic books have been kind of terrible. So I've been reading a lot of mangas lately, and I've been reading a lot of Isekai mangas. I hope I pronounced that right. And I decided, you know what? Like, as I was reading them, ideas started to float in my head. And for anyone who doesn't know, I'm actually a screenwriter. I write mostly movies. Basically, I've been hired by studios. I've sold numerous scripts. I've sold like over 10 scripts to studios. It's just the fact that they haven't gone through the process of being filmed yet. I've also been hired to do rewrites on other people's projects. Basically, a studio will have a script. They like the basic idea, but something about it's just not working. They give it to me. I touch it up, give it back. The last script that I did a rewrite for is currently in post-production. So, yay. But yeah, I've always been a huge fan of manga since I was a kid. And I've always wanted to kind of try one. Like, one of my dreams is to either do a manga or a comic book. Specifically a manga, though. Mostly a manga, I should say. Not specifically. Mostly a manga. Anyways, as I've been reading a bunch of Isekai mangas, I just kind of had an idea for my own. So I decided I'm going to do not a new series, maybe, if you guys like it, but basically pirate pitches. So I'm going to pitch you my idea for an Isekai, and you guys tell me what you think. So for anyone who doesn't know what Isekai is, let's kind of just go into some details about what exactly it is. So Isekai stands for basically different world, and it's usually about a character, usually a normal character, like basically just a regular Joe like one of us. Could be a guy, could be a girl, who gets transported from one world to another. Usually it's from a normal world, like our present day world, into a fantasy world, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a fantasy world. Biggest examples I could use would be Konosuba, Overlord, Inuyasha. Now that I think about it, actually technically counts as an isekai. So series like that. So we're gonna go a little bit more detail into this. So usually we start off with it's usually a teenager, or usually like late high school, early college students. Of course, there are there are like novels and series that take place with the character who's in their 30s, 40s. I've seen one where he's in his 70s. So age doesn't really matter, but usually for the most part, it's a young character. Usually tends to be a guy. However, there have been some female characters. There is one. I can't remember the Japanese name, but the English name is something like "So I'm a Spider, So What." Great series. Basically, it's this schoolgirl who gets transported to this new world where she is a spider, and she basically has to like level up and stuff. Really great series. But yeah, like I said, it could be an old man too. So here's a version of an old man as our protagonist. Characters are usually isolated characters. Either they are just nerds or they're social outcasts. They tend to just basically not have that many friends. Usually, but not always, they're a loser. Basically, they have nothing going on with their lives. There are exceptions. There are characters who, like in this one, this guy is an assassin. He's a very accomplished assassin. He's actually the best assassin in the world. So they're not all losers. But for the most part, they're characters that just don't really have anything going on for them in terms of their life. And for the most part, they tend to die in the first chapter. Now, not all isekais have characters being killed. Inuyasha, for example, is the perfect exception. But for the most part, the teleportation involves the main character dying. It's usually by a truck. There's this whole meme called Truck Gun. Basically, it's the greatest killer in anime is a truck, because the truck always tends to plow into our heroes, kills them, and then they're reborn into this new magical world or fantasy world or just different world. But again, character does not necessarily need to die. In Yasha, for example, Kagome finds a well and whenever she goes inside the well, she gets transported to feudal Japan. So characters don't necessarily need to die. There's also Overlord, or even Log Horizon, where the main character is playing a VR game, and then for some reason the VR becomes real, and he now lives in that VR world. So it's not necessarily a death has to happen, but for the most part, it does. So, and it's usually a truck. There have been some series where the main character actually gets summoned. Basically, they get summoned from their world. They wake up in the fantasy world, usually by a king or a magician who tells them, hey, our land is in danger. We need a hero. You're that hero. Help save our land. But for the most part, you got a loser character walking out the streets. For some reason, they're not paying attention, or maybe they see someone about to get hit, so they shove them out of the way. Boom, they get hit by a truck, they die, and then they wake up in this, it's usually almost like temple-like, very giant room, but very kind of empty. There's really not much in there, and they're usually greeted by a goddess. Not necessarily always a goddess, but usually it tends to be a female character, very goddess-like. So I usually just say a goddess, and she kind of explains to them, hey, you were dead, or for characters who didn't get killed, they'll be like, hey, you've been summoned, or you have the opportunity to be transported to this new world. And they basically kind of go over the rules. The rules being that you can get a skill. Each series is different, but for the most part, the main character gets to have one skill. Usually, the main character gets an OP skill, but not always. But the main character basically has a skill that they get to take with them. So they're not just going into this new world like blind or empty-handed. The skill can be anything from a special power to a special ability, a special weapon, maybe an armor of some kind, whatever. It all kind of depends on what exactly the author wants to tell for his story. Also, most, but again, not all, but most Isekai series also have a video game kind of theme, where basically the main character will actually have almost like a pop-up with video game stats. So like you see in this one, it'll have his name, it'll have his age, his job, what level he's at, and then his stats, stamina, charm, intelligence, warrior, like strength, stuff like that, magic, and in most isekais, the character will be able to level up by doing certain things. So basically, the more he fights with the sword, the higher his sword status will level up, and he can become a swordsman or something. There's one that I've been currently reading where the main character finishes enemies off with his fists. Like he fights with his sword at first, and he finishes them off with their fists, and then his monk ability raises up. There's one where he accidentally takes an item that doesn't belong to him, so all of a sudden one of his classes becomes thief class, and then the more he steals, the higher his thief class raises. That one series I was talking about earlier, the spider, she basically levels up her spider ability, so she can shoot web. She can make her web stronger. She can basically throw almost like poison, and she can have a poisonous bite. Basically different things like that. So it's basically anyone familiar with RPGs, you kind of get the idea. Main character starts off usually pretty low, but a lot of isekais tend to OP their main characters from the get-go. So maybe their stats might be low, but there's one stat that's super high or whatever, and that kind of breaks the game for them. But yeah, basically like most RPGs, they have stats, and their stats level up. And like I said, they find themselves in a new world. Usually it tends to be a fantasy world of some kind, but it doesn't always have to be the case. But just for the most part, it's usually a fantasy world. And harems are also a very, very popular thing in isekais, especially among the more trashy isekais. And I'm not using the word trashy as like an insult. There have been plenty of trashy mangas that I've truly enjoyed. So, but for the most part, you get a main character who finds it like pretty much right here. Wake up to find himself in another world. By attaining a skill, he achieves his dream of making a harem. Yeah, this is a very popular thing amongst isekais. Even the good ones like Overlord tends to at some point kind of have a harem theme running along with it. Slavery also seems to play a huge part in isekais, where the main character buying a female slave later becomes a part of his harem. It's weird, but that's the way it is. So, yeah. I don't need to worry about being demonetized because I don't have that big of a channel yet, so whatever. So here's basically my pitch, and I drew my own illustrations, but don't expect anything great. My drawing skills suck. I actually used to be pretty decent. I wouldn't say good. I would say decent, but I haven't drawn in forever, and now my drawings, it's basically glorified stick figures. But I figure maybe showing a little bit of something is better than nothing. But yeah, feel free to make fun of my drawings all you want. I know they suck, but let's get into it. So, yeah, here we go. So my take on the isekai, not necessarily a deconstruction, but a bit of an invert of the usual tropes. So usually you start with a weak, normal character, outcast, who has nothing going for them, and then they get teleported into this fantasy world where they become a knight, or they become a warrior of some kind, and they save the lands. So my idea for an isekai, my take on it would be, what if we start the opposite? What if we have our main character is already a hero? What if he had just finished slaying the Demon King, or uniting all the lands together? He's a hero. Everybody loves him. So he's not like a nobody. He's strong. He's already OP. He can defeat pretty much every monster single-handedly. He's the greatest of the great. Everyone looks up to him. And then one day he gets hit by a wagon. Because we're in the fantasy world, there is no trucks, but there are wagons. So our main character is crossing the street, minding his own business, and then bam, a wagon hits him, and he dies. So our hero, as I said earlier, usually they wake up in this very large, almost temple like room, very sparse, not that many things there. In our series, he wakes up basically almost like in an accounting office. Tiny office, cluttered with a bunch of books and papers and all this other garbage. Instead of a sexy female goddess, we just get this giant, fat, balding character. Again, maybe like a salaryman or accountant or something, who is just done with his life. Because usually in isekais, like the goddess is very usually happy-go-lucky, very friendly, but we just get some guy who's just like someone you would see at like the DMV. He's just like, oh, I'm just like done with this shit. I'm tired of like helping transport these heroes to another world. I mean, look at all this paperwork I got. I don't have any help. The intern sucks, so he was fired. So now I have to do all this shit on my own. So he's just done with life, and he's just like, all right, here's your new life. Get the fuck out of here. And then our character, basically, rather than being some kind of great hero or powerful, muscular guy or girl or just whatever, it's just some schmuck of a teenager or college student or whatever, just an average Joe. So basically, it's the inverse. We go from a social outcast, gets hit by a car, wakes up in the fantasy world, becomes a hero. Instead, we get a hero, gets hit by a wagon, wakes up in our world, present day, as just an average Joe. And my take can go two separate ways. We can either go the more actiony route, where maybe there are some kind of creatures or something in this world that this character has to solve. Maybe instead of monsters, maybe it's just other people. Maybe there are people doing like terrible things. Like maybe they're people who are like serial killers or people like stealing money or just, and our character fights them rather than monsters. Maybe instead of like literally fighting, maybe the fighting is almost like a mystery setting where he has to basically he has to develop skills that he can use to gain information on his target, and then that's how he takes out his target. It's not necessarily with physical violence, but maybe he gets evidence and gets them to the police or just something, whatever. Or we can go just a completely different route. One of my favorite series of all time is Yotsuba. It's a comedy slice of life. Maybe that's the direction we can go. So our character is in this world, our world. He has no idea. It could be a she too, but just for the sake of this example, I'm just going to use him pronouns. He's in our world and he has no idea about any of this stuff. He doesn't know what a car is, TVs, radios, like technology in general. Maybe he doesn't know the language. Maybe he's in a different country. Maybe he was in a fantasy world, kind of like ancient Europe, and now he's in Japan or now he's in America. So like nothing makes sense to him. So then we get like a fish out of water comedy slice of life with this former hero who's now a nobody, and in this world where he doesn't understand anything. And our story is basically just him trying to figure out what's going on and just his daily interactions with things that make no sense to him. And there we go. So we can go separate directions with this. But yeah, that's it. That's my idea for an isekai. We basically just take the more cliche tropes and then we just kind of invert them a little bit. I don't want to go too inverted because we could go like he goes from a strong muscular dude to a weak, tiny, overweight person. Usually in isekais, if the main character is older, when they get transported to this new world, they become younger. And like I showed earlier, for the more trashier isekais, they usually develop a harem of some kind. We don't need to go that far, but if we want, we could have him develop some kind of harem, but we don't need to do that. Basically, just picking some of the more well-known tropes and just kind of changing them just a little bit, just to kind of maybe do something different. So yeah, we take our hero and we throw him into our world, and now he's a fish out of water trying to figure everything out. So there we go. There's my idea of an isekai. As far as I know, it's original, but I could be completely wrong. There are tons and tons and tons of isekais out there. I mean, there's literally like over hundreds of them, and they're all crazy and weird and very interesting, and I freaking love them all. But there's isekais where the main character becomes a thief, a mage. There's ones where they become inanimate objects. Like there's literally one where he becomes a sword, and another character basically wields them. There's one where they become a spider, which I mentioned. There's one where he becomes a vending machine. No joke, our hero becomes a vending machine. Yeah, I would not be surprised if this idea has kind of been done before, but as far as I know, it hasn't. But there we go. There's my take on the isekai. There's my version of it. If someone came up to me and be like, hey, pirate, let's do an isekai, I'd be like, here we go. Here's my idea. This is my pitch for it. So tell me what you guys think. If you guys have your own ideas for isekai, whether it's taking this idea and, what changes would you make? Like, you know what, pirate, instead of doing this, I would have done this instead. Let me know. If you have your completely different version of isekais, let me know that too. I'm totally down for hearing that. As for what I'm going to do with this, probably nothing. I've thought about writing my own light novel one of these days, but I don't know if I would do an isekai, and I don't know if I would do this isekai. I'll probably do something else. For anyone, I have literally a folder just filled with files and files and files and files of ideas for stories for comics, for mangas, stories for TV series, stories for movies. I just don't have time to get through all of them. So this is probably just going to be just another story that kind of gets put on the shelf, and maybe I never come back to it. Maybe I do someday, who knows. But it was just something that was kind of bouncing around my head, and I just kind of wanted to just get it out there. And I figure, hey, let's let's put it on the YouTube. So tell me what you guys think. You guys like my idea? You guys hate my idea? What would you do? Any changes you would make? What are your ideas for an Isekai? For this, I kind of want to stick with just Isekai. But I mean, if you have ideas for something else, go ahead. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna stop you. Also, tell me what you guys think about this idea for pirate pitches, because I have a lot of stuff that I can pitch. Like I said, like my literal profession is a writer. Like that's what I do for a living, and I don't have time to write every idea that I come up with. So I literally have a bunch of them just sitting there on the shelves collecting dust. So if you guys want to hear more pitches, I can always do more. Just tell me what you guys think. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe. I would really love it. I'm trying to hit at least 400 by the end of the year. So if you guys could help me reach that goal, I would be very thankful. Hit the bell for notifications. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like it. And again, comment down below if you so choose. I greatly appreciate interacting with anyone that comments down below, unless you guys are a-holes, but I tend not to. I tend to get pretty cool people, and I enjoy talking to you guys, so feel free to comment down below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy, and I will catch you guys next time. Later.